Okay, right. Call to order, pledge for allegiance.
Recording?
Yep.
Yep.
Right.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Yes.
Okay. Right, first item is to approve the minutes of the last meeting, January 17th.
So moved.
Second. Fine. Thank you. Right, second item, which is the most important one, I'd just like to introduce Jennifer Doherty from the Massachusetts Historical Commission, where she is the Local Governance Programs Coordinator and has very kindly set aside some time to give us a complete run-through of what we need to know and do about setting up the local historic district. And so, without further ado, over to you. And we'll leave all the Q&A to the end, or do you mind? How do you want to do it?
It's either's fine.
It's a small group, so
Yeah, if you want to, have be more of a discussion, we can certainly do that as we go
Okay.
through. Just let me know. Just yell out. Yeah. So I'm Jen Doherty, Local Government Programs Coordinator. I'm sort of the main point of contact for local folks at the Mass Historical Commission for all the historic district commissions, historical commissions, things like that. So I just spend my day answering questions a lot of the time. But so this is a presentation that I usually give as a workshop. So it's a little longer, but I'll probably crunch some of the pieces out of it. So first, the big thing, local historic districts are not National Register districts. Folks often get confused by that, but it is important to note that they are two different things, especially if you're going to look at an area that is already listed in the National Register. The National Register is a program of the National Park Service. It's sort of structured through them. It does run through us a bit, but it's overseen by the Park Service, and it is largely honorary. There's no local review for National Register districts, National Register properties. It doesn't really mean anything for the most part when a property owner is doing things to their property. But the local historic districts, what you all are looking at, those are local. They're established by a vote of town meeting. They're established by the community. And they do have a lot of review, which we'll talk about kind of what that is. So it's important to keep in mind the difference. We do have a little brochure on our website that you can print off or use that talks about the difference between the two. So sort of taking a wider look at the state, you can kind of see that there's over 100 communities that have established a local historic district under Mass General Laws Chapter 40C, which is the enabling act for historic districts. There are some other kinds of districts, but I won't get into those. But just know that most communities are using 40C for their local historic districts. So what is a local historic district? What is it protecting? It's really protecting the significant historic and cultural resources in your community. It's not preserving it like a museum. It's not saying that no change can ever occur, but it's really kind of allowing for that thoughtful consideration of change. That's what the phrase we like to use. And while it is allowing for a lot of local review, it does also allow for exemptions, and it allows for hardship situations. So it's not saying that people can never do any work to their properties. Again, it's just that sort of thoughtful consideration of change. So there's a lot of ways they can kind of be tailored to the community's needs when you're thinking about them and establishing them. So they are local historic districts in Massachusetts. We do have enabling legislation for them. It's the state Mass General Laws Chapter 40C. Established in 1963, so communities have been establishing these since 1963. And it lays out three major purposes for local historic districts. Protecting, obviously, those significant resources that are in the district, maintaining and improving their setting. So that includes things that are around the buildings, but it also includes more modern resources. So you can include 1980s houses in districts, and you will still sort of review them like you would those other historic buildings, because they can have an impact on the historic resources. And then similarly, also reviewing new construction and encouraging good infill design. Once a community establishes a local historic district, they set up a historic district commission. It is usually not necessarily the same study committee, but it does have some of the same membership requirements that the study committee had in terms of AIA, Realtor, or asking organizations for nominations in historic New England as well. And then some communities will choose to use their existing historical commission as their historic district commission, but a lot will separate the two commissions and have two separate appointed commissions. It just kind of depends on what you want to do. And I will say for those communities that do have a combined commission, we don't, it's not something we necessarily recommend, because they start to sort of lose the forest through the trees. They lose the historical commission side of it because they're so focused on, we have applications that we need to be reviewing, at their monthly meetings. So something to think about down the line, obviously. So as I said, over 100 communities have local historic districts under 40C in Massachusetts. There's actually over 550 districts across the state. However, 40C does allow you to create single building districts, single property districts. And Somerville has really run with that. They have over 200 single building districts. So that 550 number is a little misleading. Most of that is just Somerville. And the city of Boston also has a large number of single building districts as well. So that bumps that number up. So the districts themselves, they can be a single property. They can be multiple properties. Most districts are multiple properties. The entire island of Nantucket is a local historic district, so it can be an entire island, an entire community. And the districts can be contiguous and non-contiguous. So the properties can be directly abutting each other, or they can kind of be scattered throughout the community and still be part of the same district. So it really just kind of depends on how you're drawing your boundaries. The other thing is we also recommend including vacant lots in districts, because as I said, they review everything, even if it's new construction or not a historic building. So we recommend folks include those vacant lots in districts. So what exactly does a local historic district review? Well, they review changes to the exterior of a property visible from a public way. So first you have to be changing something. That can be the design, the materials, and then obviously new construction is a change. But if you're not changing anything, if it's a basic repair, the example I usually use is if you're getting your house painted and there's some rotted sills, they're going to take the rotted ones out, put them back in with new wood, and it's going to be the same profile. You're not changing anything there. That's not something that would need to be reviewed by the Historic District Commission. So a lot of that basic maintenance work is not subject to review. Exterior, obviously they only review things on the exterior. They don't do anything on the interior of properties. But they do review other things on the outside of a property. So sheds, swing sets, lighting, sometimes pools and land, hardscaping, things like that. And then the work needs to be visible from a public way. So obviously if you're standing on the street, you're looking at the house, what can you see? If the house is just parallel to a street, you're probably going to be able to see the front, maybe the two sides, but you're not going to be able to see the back. So someone can do kind of whatever they want back there as long as it's not starting to be visible from a public way. But also, if your house is on a corner, likely the whole house is going to be visible from a public way. And then thinking about other public ways, rivers are public ways, lakes, those are also important to think about if you have them in the district. What they don't review, again, interior features, and then landscaping. Landscaping is completely exempt from review under 40C. It's considered, you know, a little more temporary in a sense. You can obviously rip out a bush, put a bush back in. It's, you know, it's not necessarily going to affect the character of the district, although some communities would certainly make the argument that landscaping can affect the character of a district. But unfortunately, it is exempt from review under 40C. And then when communities adopt a local historic district, they can pick and choose from this list of exemptions if they would like. And it really depends on the community and the district if they choose any of these exemptions, all of these exemptions, none of these exemptions. But they're generally things that are a little more temporary, that aren't necessarily going to have a drastic impact on the character of the building. So again, things that are kind of at grade, paving that's at grade, color of paint is the big one. You can exempt that, people love that, and color of roofs as well. Storm doors and windows is another big one that tends to get exempted. And then local historic districts can also choose to exempt things after a public hearing. So for example, I believe Salem exempts window boxes because they're very common in Salem's districts, and as long as they meet certain size and color requirements, then you don't need to come to it for review. So the process. Here's the process, and I'll go through it quickly, but then we'll go through sort of step by step. So first, you know, we encourage folks to kind of have a lot of, you know, planning materials and background. It seems like you all are kind of working on that, kind of gathering those background materials. You know, I always tell folks to check master plans, or if the community has a preservation plan, see if the local historic district or the idea of a local historic district is mentioned in there. Gathering inventory forms, the inventory forms that are available on the property, or National Register nominations, things like that. You've already established a study committee, so you're at least one step in. But then your main work is kind of, you know, figuring out what the district is going to be. You know, what are the boundaries going to be? Are you going to adopt any of those exemptions? You know, all those kinds of things. And ultimately what this group is working towards, if you are going to recommend a district to the town of Newbury, is to prepare what we call a preliminary study report. And so that's kind of summarizing all your work, laying out the justification for the district, summarizing the boundaries, recommendations for the bylaw, for exemptions, things like that. After you do that, you submit that to me at the MHC, and you submit that to your local planning board. You have to wait 60 days. Sorry. You have to wait 60 days, and that's just an opportunity for the MHC and the local planning board to review and comment. Neither board or organization can stop a district. It's just, you know, what we usually do is say, yes, we recommend the town of Newbury establish this historic district. But that gives us time to do that. After the 60 days, you have to hold a public hearing. You can certainly hold other public meetings, other public hearings before then, but you have to at least hold one after that 60-day period. Then you finalize that preliminary study report. You take any comments received from the public, any comments received from the planning board, the MHC, incorporate them into the study report. And that's ultimately what gets submitted to town meeting for a vote. And then it is a 2/3 vote of town meeting. Local historic districts aren't zoning, but it is still a 2/3 vote of zoning articles. There's a couple steps after that. You have to record the district at the registry of deeds, things like that. But other than that, you have a local historic district at that point, and have to appoint the commission and kind of get to the work of the historic district commission. So again, it seems like you guys are all gathering the sort of preliminary information, background information. That's, you know, one of the important pieces, looking to see what kind of documentation you have about the district, see if there's been recommendations to establish a district in the past. Inventory forms are a huge help here, but again, if it's mentioned in a master plan or something like that, you also want to look for that. Public outreach is an important part of the work as well. It seems like there already is some interest from the owners in the proposed area that you're looking at, so that's good. Certainly kind of continuing to reach out to them. But what I really encourage folks to focus on for this part is the story of the district. You know, why is it important to Newbury? What is significant about these houses or these buildings? Why should we try and save this? So really making sure you kind of have that history down and can, relate the different buildings in the district to that larger history. Again, there's a lot of misconceptions around local historic districts, so really making sure you have that information clear about what they do and do not review, that there's this opportunity to choose different exemptions in the bylaw, and thinking about if folks might want some of those exemptions in there. It's important to have that. And then, thinking about who else might be interested in this proposed district besides just the residents. It is not up to the residents, really. There's no required consent from property owners. It ultimately goes to town meeting. So you also want to think about, those town meeting voters are the ones who are going to make that decision. So, making sure you are doing some wider outreach to the community to make them aware of what a local historic district is. And then, boards like the select board or the planning board, making sure you're kind of keeping them updated as you move through things, so that when you get to different points, they're aware that this process has been, happening in the background. So the other big task you all have to do is decide what the district is. Where are your boundaries? What is it going to be? So as I said, districts can be anything. They can be a single property. They can be a whole community. But you just really want to make sure that the boundaries that you come up with are clear, logical, and defensible. You want to make sure you have some reasons behind it, and that it's not confusing in any way. So again, it's kind of thinking about the overall character of the district, and not necessarily, oh, we want this house, this house, this house. Again, what happens on one lot can impact what happens on another lot. So even if it's something that doesn't necessarily seem historic, you may still want to include it in the district because the buildings on the other side of it are historic. We try to avoid these Swiss cheese districts here, or avoid kind of looping in and out of things because of that. You're protecting that whole character of the district. We encourage folks to do both sides of the street, obviously for the same reason. And the other thing, there's a few communities that have done districts where it's 200 feet back from the property line, or from the road line. That's their district. We don't encourage that. We encourage you to follow property lines, because then you end up with split properties and someone can do whatever they want because it's 210 feet, outside of the
So it doesn't have to be whole lots.
It doesn't have to be, but we encourage it that you do have it be
Because
whole
some of the
lots.
lots we're looking at quite elongated. So.
Yeah. It's certainly up to you, but again, you want to think about if something is going to happen on that back lot.
Right.
What kind of impact will that have on the character of the district? Because there's a couple communities that do have those numeric or distance boundaries, and they do run into a lot of issues where people are specifically putting stuff on the back of the lot because they know it's excluded from the district, and it's not great. So. And so then once you kind of have a lot of those basic questions answered, then, again, putting it all together into that preliminary study report. And I will say, we get study reports from local folks who prepare them. We get study reports from municipal planning staff. We get study reports prepared by consultants. So it's really up to you. If you feel like you can take on the work of preparing the study report, you can certainly do that. But, it doesn't hurt to ask for help if you know you need it. It's important to remember that it is ultimately kind of a legal document that, is going to town meeting, and, you want it to kind of have its, present your best foot forward in terms of presenting the historic district. So just something to think about. These are all the pieces that go into the study report, but I do also now have a study report template that you can use. So it makes it a little easier, and it goes through all of those pieces and what's needed in each section. So if you do want to take it on yourselves, I can send that to you, so you have that as kind of a guide. So again, that gets submitted to me at the MHC and to your local planning board. But we don't approve or disapprove districts, we just make a recommendation. You'll receive, acknowledgement that I have received it, and I'll tell you when your 60 days expires, because it's important to kind of keep that in mind. If you have a town meeting in mind, you may want to start to work back from that, because that is really the biggest chunk that you can't change. You all can adjust your schedules and adjust your meetings, whatever, but that 60 days needs to be in there at some point before you get to town meeting, with time for a public hearing after it, before you get to town meeting. I have had communities, their 60 days expires on Friday and they hold the public hearing Monday, and then town meeting starts Tuesday night. If you are really trying, time crunch and, trying to get something done. But, you do want to kind of keep that in mind in terms of thinking about your schedule. So again, you have to hold that public hearing, and then incorporating any of the comments received into the final study report. And it's important to keep in mind that things can change about the district. You can change the boundaries, even after you prepare that initial preliminary study report. If something comes up, people, why didn't you do this house, or why didn't you add this piece, or no, we don't want to include this piece. You can make changes to that preliminary study report before you submit that final study report to town meeting for a vote, because it's kind of understood that that'll happen throughout the process. So that, again, that final study report is submitted to town meeting. It's a 2/3 vote. And again, under 40C, there is no requirement for owner consent. So even if someone gets up at town meeting and is really angry about it, town meeting can certainly still vote to add their property to the district, even if they don't want it in there. But I will say, some communities have come up, sort of informally with their own requirements around owner consent. So for example, I used to work in Framingham, and they wanted us to have letters from every property owner whenever we brought a district forward saying that they consented. Brookline's town meeting has a 80% threshold that they do with petitions. They get property owners to sign. So know that it's something that may come up because you haven't done this before. It's something that may come up at town meeting, so you just might want to think about ways to address that as you go through the process. If a lot of the owners are in support, having them sign a petition, having them sign some kind of form letter or anything like that could be a good way to think about that. So if your vote doesn't pass, what happens? Again, kind of taking some time back to step back and think about, was there more work that kind of could have been done, more planning background to really support the proposed recommendation, things like that. Working with the historical commission, doing more survey work that really highlights the history of the area. Just again, kind of taking that step back and thinking about providing more support for the community. If it does pass, there's some steps after that. The Attorney General's office reviews all town meeting warrants and votes. And then the district has to be recorded at the Registry of Deeds to be legal. That is the sort of last step. And then you submit it to us, and we add it to the State Register of Historic Places. Districts automatically get added to the State Register. And so then you have a local historic district after that process, hopefully. Again, you have to appoint the Historic District Commission. That's similar to this process through the Select Board. They adopt their own rules and regulations, design guidelines, and application, things like that. And then we encourage folks, obviously, to publicize the district, signs or something on the website. Are always great ways to do that.
So we would design our own sign. You don't have something.
We don't have any set
okay.
signs, no, but there's
Okay.
plenty of communities around the state that have them. So
Right.
yeah. So that's about all I have. But so just the key takeaways. Mass General Laws Chapter 40C is really what lays out the process and have a lot of the information in there about the process. You want to focus again on the public outreach and information, really making sure you have that background, the story of the district clear, and then the process for establishing the district. And again, I'm always here. This is what I do. So when you're like, we don't know what we're supposed to do next or what should we be working on, I can certainly answer questions, meet with you guys, whatever it may be. And then just some recent successes and failures, because folks usually like to ask. So as I said, Somerville has 200 some individual districts. They've actually recently combined some into a larger district, which was good. They added some additional properties as well. There was a house in Lexington. It's this early 20th century sort of Spanish revival kind of house. The owner was preparing to demolish it and redevelop the site. It was put under demolition delay, and then during that process they went to town meeting to protect the property and protect the neighborhood with the local historic district larger than just that property. But it ultimately failed. There's a lot of pro-development folks in Lexington, and they felt the property owner should be able to develop the site however they wanted, so that was kind of unfortunate for Lexington. There was a similar argument, a similar sort of pro-development argument in Brookline recently as well. They were looking to expand one of their local historic districts. That failed. But Brookline also recently protected 5 properties associated with Frederick Law Olmsted and H.H. Richardson as part of a thematic district. And so that was a thematic district, so the properties aren't actually contiguous. They're near each other somewhat, but they're all kind of spread out a bit. So those were some recent successes and failures. So that's all I have.
It's interesting because some of the comments that have come up in the preliminary discussions of this was about what legal teeth the commission afterwards has on if an owner wants to make an application to do something, which may get approved by the select board, but then fall under the commission. I don't sort of how do you, if there is a dispute over that, how's that resolved? Which carries the bigger weight? The local select board planning committee or the?
No. So this ultimately just becomes part of that planning process, and it's something that's required. In 40C and in your bylaw, it'll say that you cannot receive a building permit until you receive a certificate of appropriateness from the Historic District Commission for the work. And then if you do the work without receiving the certificate of appropriateness, there's a process for fines, there's a process for that. So it's just required. It's like anything else. If someone has to go to the planning board and they have to go to the Conservation Commission, then maybe they also have to go to the Historic District Commission. It just becomes part of the planning landscape and is required. The only thing where it gets superseded is if there's a 40B development. That is the only time where there is no historic district, essentially, because that removes 40B developments remove all permitting essentially from a process, and there's very limited community input for those.
Good. Okay.
So I'm curious because this area that we're looking at, we're looking at the buildings, the built environment, but then there's also a bridge of historic nature. There's open space already protected by the trustees of reservation and Greenbelt. Should we be looking at including those or specifically excluding those because they're not building based?
It's up to you. You would still review the bridge. If something was going to happen to the bridge, that would still be subject to review. So you could certainly include that if there were concerns about that. And the green space, if it's protected, obviously, that's great. But you could say, well, we just want another layer of protection on it, so we're just going to add this anyways. Kind of if it's something that relates to the history of the district, you might consider including it then, because you're really thinking about a larger district, thinking about the larger history there. But again, if it's from a public way, so if it's 40 acres and they build something way back where you can't even see it, that's fine. But it would just be what's subject to the public way.
Yes, that's a good point, because the potential area abuts area owned by the Greenbelt and area owned by the trustees of the Massachusetts Reservations, which in themselves are huge lots, I mean, vast acreages,
Yeah.
that presumably there'd have to be some sort of negotiation with them, how much, and their willingness, I suppose, to participate in this. 'Cause
We should definitely include them, give them a,
oh yeah,
Yeah.
well, they'll have to be
Yeah.
informed anyway under your sort of the outreach section.
Yeah, I mean, you could certainly reach out to them and see, again, they don't have to consent to this, so it doesn't really matter if they say no. You obviously want them on board though.
Yeah.
And if it's again, if it's something that's going to go, a piece of land that goes very far back, yes, that may be one situation where you say, okay, we review the first 100 feet of the property or something like that, thinking about that. But, you may want to include the whole thing because 100 years from now, who knows, maybe they decide to develop it or something. It's really kind of up to you all how you want to think about
it's
that.
also a good faith effort, I think,
Yeah.
to include them and get them to the
Yes,
table.
and say
Yeah.
we're
Yeah.
including the whole thing, it's part of the district.
I have a question about public view shed, because it comes to mind that if landscape is not protected and therefore does not require prior approval, then someone could plant a large hedge to shield the rear of their property, and therefore then it is no longer.
Yeah, so what we do in those situations is we encourage folks to ignore landscaping if it's between the public way and the building that you're looking at. Because exactly, someone could have a giant boxwood hedge in front of their house and say, oh, my house is completely not visible, do a whole bunch of work, and then they cut down the hedge and suddenly the entire house is visible. So we, I don't know that there's someone was asking me about this the other day, there's not necessarily any case law saying this, but what we do recommend is that folks, if the building is fairly close to the street and there is some landscaping there, ignore the landscaping. You would review everything as though it was fully visible from the public way.
Does that get written into any of the review guidelines?
It usually gets written in the design guidelines, yeah. Not necessarily like the bylaw, but just in the design guidelines, yeah. And the same, so one of the things that you can exempt is fences and walls. So if those are exempt, that would be the same thing. That, even if you put up a giant fence,
Or you could choose to include them.
if you choose,
Yeah.
you can choose to
Yeah.
include them for review, yeah.
That bridge was rebuilt,
Oh,
Okay,
yeah.
all right.
It's been- But the question is, because it's been rebuilt so many times, should we include it, or is it
I
now
see.
kind of
Yeah.
outside of our what we want?
Yeah, it's certainly up to you. The one thing I do want to say though about bridges is the federal government and the state government are not subject to historic district regulations. So if it was a state highway and MassDOT came in and was going to redo the bridge, you unfortunately would not have any review over that. We have a process at the state level where we review those kinds of projects, and we usually will get input from the local commissions, but they're not required to come to you all for certificate of appropriateness before they move forward with their work. So that's something to keep in mind if it is a state bridge or something like that.
So, and on the question of the landscaping, the particular area may need some tree replanting. Bring it back. I mean, proper tree, not to fences or hedges, but trees. Presumably that's outside all of this. That would be up to the local select board, I guess.
Yep, that would be, whatever local regulations you have around tree planting,
Yeah,
conservation commission, tree
Right.
warden, whatever,
Okay.
anything like that, that would
So-
all fall under that kind of thing, but no requirements around landscaping here, so.
Okay, very good.
Do all of our meetings have to be public, or could we, as a group, go and just walk the space ourselves?
Yep, you
Okay.
can have site visits of your board, I think you do have to post them.
You do
Yes.
have to post them.
Sidewalks.
Yeah.
But
Okay.
you just can't discuss things that are coming before your board. You can certainly kind of walk around and look at the area, but,
You just want to go out.
Yeah.
I'm not sure that would be as helpful.
If you just want to go take a walk by yourself.
Individually.
Yeah. You can certainly do that.
Right. Very good. Excellent. Thank you very much. Any
I guess one last question
go
is,
ahead.
very long term, we have, a commission overseeing any kind of changes. What if there is a property where an owner refuses to do something and it becomes worse and worse and they blame it on the, review board? What recourse is there for that? Any? Or
Yeah. So the important thing about historic districts is that they do not compel the property owner to do anything. Like, they can just say, I'm never going to paint my house, I'm never going to fix my house, here's my building, it's just going to fall down, and it is what it is. So there's no recourse under the historic district for that, unfortunately. There is some communities, or a number of communities do have demolition by neglect or minimum maintenance bylaws. They go by both names. That's a separate thing. It's a general bylaw, separate thing. And those lay out sort of minimum maintenance standards, that tend to go beyond a lot of the basic stuff that you have under like Board of Health. Obviously, like if you have, a vermin problem on your property right now, that's a Board of Health issue. Or if the building is literally falling down, that's a building commissioner issue. But it tends to lay out a few more things in terms of like, painting or maintaining landscaping, maintaining the building in different ways, trash, things like that, yeah. And it allows, those bylaws allow, after a process, it actually allows the community to fix what's wrong with the building or what's wrong with the property and then place a lien on the property. So if the property owner ever sells it, they can get the money back from the work that they did. So, if the property's overgrown and there's a bunch of broken windows and it's a nuisance, maybe the town goes in, mows it, fixes some of the windows, and then places a lien on the property for, the amount. So that's an option. That's, something that communities have that allows them to do that.
What about if somebody does something outrageous to the property after the fact? Like they do some,
If it's in a local historic district?
Yeah.
Yep.
And we find out that like somebody in the dark of night has, done something crazy. We all wake up in the morning and go, wait a minute.
Demolish the entire building? Yep, that's happened before. Yep. It is currently going through the process in Newton right now. So there's a process usually written into the bylaw. It's usually a $300 a day fine. Each violation each occurrence constitutes a new violation, and each day constitutes a new violation. So if you demolish the building, that's a violation, and then for $300, and then each day after that is $300 until it's rectified, until the violation is rectified. So that can be going through the process of rebuilding the building. It can be getting a certificate of appropriateness from the commission, whatever the case may be. So that's the process. And then some communities will also put like a no-build order in there, which is basically you can't issue building permits for the site for 2 years after that violation.
Okay. I like that.
It happened in Newton in 2020,
That's what we're
2021.
trying to get in front of it.
Yeah. Somebody demolished, it was a local landmark, which is similar to a local historic district, but developer, demolished a house and already had plans up on Zillow for the replacement building, and they were like, no. So they're still going through the process of deciding how that's going to play out.
So it has some teeth to deal with.
Yep. And it ultimately comes back to kind of the building code, that it's a violation of the building code because you needed to get this before you got a building permit and you didn't get a building permit, and so here you are.
So what would be the process, say, when we establish the local historic district, other property owners would say, I'd like to be
You wanna
included.
join? Yep.
would it be another whole process? It
Mhm.
would be, yeah.
Yeah, it's
Ugh.
the same process. Only in the future, once you have established a historic district, in the future, that existing historic district commission acts as the study committee.
Ah.
So it's not that you need to go back to select board and they need to appoint the study committee again, and then you go through the process. It's just that the historic district
So
commission
you
says.
don't have the same timeline over bolt-ons.
You do have the same, it's the same process,
Process.
but it's just a different board kind of overseeing it. So then it would be the historic district commission votes and says, oh, we're gonna be the study committee and we're gonna look at expanding this district. And then again, you would go through, back through this same
So
process.
you still have your 60-day.
Yep, you still have to do the study report, 60-day public hearing, go to town meeting kind of thing, so, yeah.
So really, we should get everyone canvassed or.
Yes, you may want to cast a wider net to
wide
begin
enough to
with,
start with.
and then think about, what that means for your district and the process, yeah. Or you could, there's, in the past, when communities were first doing this, they would, they planned to do it in phases, and they did do it in phases. So we have communities where there's local historic district 1, and then there's 2, and then there's 3, because they kind of, move through that way, kind of going in chunks around the community or around an area.
Right, okay. Good. Anything? Thank you very much.
Excellent,
Very-
thank you
very
very much, that was
informative
wonderful.
Yep.
and, gives us a very good outline of what we need to do. Okay. Right.
Anything else while I'm here?
The sample things you've got, they're all available on the website. The
Say that again?
study, the sample, flashed up sample.
I can send you the sample, the template for the
Yeah.
study report, because that's not on the website.
It's not on, yeah, we'll,
Yeah.
if you
Okay,
can, yeah.
Yep.
Or send it to our secretary.
And I think,
First.
I sent you the guidebook though.
Yes.
Yeah,
we've done-
so that's,
got that,
yeah, that's the
yes.
big one.
Yeah, we'll need sample templates. Is there, just to see how other communities have done,
Mhm.
just to sort of get a visual, I know
Yep.
each one's different.
Yep.
Just
Yeah,
the
I think,
presentation.
So close to us is Rowley, I know they have a historic district, I don't think Newburyport does.
Oh,
yes, it
yes,
does.
It does?
Newburyport.
They have, and, okay,
It's
they're
the
spotty.
whole of New.
Yes.
Is
Yellow.
it, is
it's
it the
a
whole,
lot of their
the whole
downtown
city?
area.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
And Rowley, is it Ipswich?
Oh, yeah,
Ipswich is
Ipswich.
loaded.
Right.
Yeah, it looks
Right.
Ipswich does
Ipswich.
not
No, it
have a
doesn't.
local historic district.
Oh, wait.
Because that was a huge fight there.
Well, they have like different local districts that is not.
They have a weird process because
It's-
it became a bit of a situation at town meeting apparently.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
I know they've got a lot of it though that's.
A lot of it is obviously a national register district.
Yeah. Maybe that's what it
okay.
is.
Yeah, they,
What you said earlier means nothing.
which really means nothing, yes. So Ipswich,
Except for
what
that does
happened?
trigger section 106 for federal and state projects.
Oh, all right.
Yeah.
It's a national register.
So it has something.
Yeah.
Yeah, so the federal government has to pay attention to it, but
So Ipswich had tried to go a number of years ago for a district for their downtown area, but they ran up against the John Birch Society, which still
Oh,
exists.
my.
And
Nice.
was very, very aggressive about property rights and
Oh, yeah.
those kinds of things.
They would be.
So what they do have now is this sort of odd district kind of thing where changes sort of like run through their select board or something like that, and it's only like major changes. It's a very odd bylaw. So I would suggest not looking at that, not looking at what they went through with there. So yes, unfortunately, Ipswich, one of the most historic communities in Massachusetts.
You'd think they'd have it
a
together.
local historic district, yes.
Wow,
no.
I didn't realize.
They tried, and they had some good folks on their side, but it didn't make it.
Okay.
But yeah, I can look for some sample ones. I'm trying to think, some sort of just good ones. Recently, it's been a lot of single building districts, and a lot of districts from Boston, which are a little different. So, those I'm not gonna send you something from there.
Rowley has a historic district.
I'll look
Yeah.
and see. The thing is, so some of these communities have very old districts
Yes,
from the
this one is
70s.
old, yeah.
Yes, and so their study reports, you know, the quality varies. Let's say, put it that way. But I can see, you know, what we've had up here, sort of recently.
Just to,
See. Yeah.
but certainly the templates.
Yep.
Get going. Great. Okay.
Thank you so much.
Thank
That
you
was
very much.
wonderful.
Yes,
Thank
very
you.
good. Let's see,
So does any of this trigger?
Oh, you have the Rowley one.
Should it?
Then she doesn't
Should
need
we
to
also
send that
be-
then. Right?
No,
What's the
that's
benefit of
just their
having
guidelines
an
afterwards. So I was wondering, I want to see the
It's
presentation.
literally
Oh, I
it's
see.
main right
Yeah.
now on easement properties that it is nationally registered. And there was a road widening project that impacted it, and we had to go through section 106, which required things like vibration studies. That seemingly weren't done, or at least were not published. That information is not available to the public right now, and so the homeowner is suing the state, because the state and the federal government did this project for damages to the house. Whether that's been successful is to you, but.
Ellie, what was that?
But we're
Sorry.
discussing the benefits of National Register
Oh.
district or individual listing versus local historic district. And let's explain kind of the you know, where that benefit comes from in terms of when the federal government is then involved in, for instance, like the one we have in Maine, this issue is a road widening project or things like that, that damage or impact or listed buildings on the National Register. They have to go through studies basically determining if there's going to be any adverse effect to that property or none, and take steps to mitigate that. And that's the ACHP.
Advisory Council of.
Thank you.
Yeah, so the.
Please stay.
So I will say, yeah, so the National Register, like I said, it really doesn't have any impact at the local level. If you are going to do a project that involves federal or state permits, licensing, or funding, there is a review process under state and federal law. But obviously you can see most people are not, you know, you're not doing work to your house that requires a federal permit or, you know, using state funds on your property, things like that. So that's why the National Register really doesn't provide a lot of direct protection for a building. Often you can demolish something that's listed on the National Register without, you know, really any kind of review. It's really only in, you know, if they're doing a road project or, you know, someone's putting up a cell tower or building an airport or something like that, that's, that there would be impacts from that.
Do you give grants in your department?
So we at MHC, we have 2 grants that we offer. Survey and planning grants, those are for survey and planning work. So doing inventory forms, preparing preservation plans. We have given them for the local historic district process before. You know, more documentation work, National Register nominations as well. And then we have our Massachusetts Preservation Projects Funds grants. Those are for pre-development and physical, you know, bricks and mortar kind of preservation work on buildings that are owned by a municipality or nonprofit.
Which, don't they also have to be already on the historic?
They have to be on the state register. Yeah.
That's not wrong.
Like our schoolhouse that we're
No.
Right.
not on yet.
If you're not on anything, yes, then that's,
we can
yeah.
prepare.
There's a lot.
Yes.
Although,
So far in our
I
schools.
have reports that got submitted, and they, because we keep changing, we don't, and we have no storage anywhere, we don't know I don't know what happened to them. Did they get rejected? Did they not, did they ask?
Was it
give
like
us-
a nomination, National Register nomination?
No,
Or?
state historic commission.
So-
The inventory forms, you know.
Oh, if it's an inventory form, yeah, I mean, I would check Macris and see if it's on Macris. If it's not on Macris, you can send me an email and I'll remind me what the property is. And I'll check and see with our staff. You know, we do have requirements around inventory forms
Yeah.
and, you know, the information that's on them and how it's presented and things like that. But I can put you in touch with our staff
That'd be
who
great.
handles the inventory forms.
Figure it out for us so
You
we
can-
can.
Yeah, at least kind of get that done.
Because a lot of them are very old.
Yes, yes.
And if we found some that never got submitted, Are they, because they're too old, they'd have to really be redone, right?
Yeah, we won't, that happened, Boston had recently found a project from the 80s, and they had a whole bunch that they found that weren't submitted, that we don't add those to MACRS. They have to be redone, yeah.
19.
Yeah, if it's something like that, we're not gonna take that.
They're just a little yellowed with age.
Yes.
But they do have some black and white photos, which
There
I
to be
notice
back
now
and
is this color.
I
Yeah,
think
we take color pictures now, yes.
We gotta be better,
Which is exciting, yes.
we better continue. right?
Oh, yes, sorry.
Okay, good, thank you.
But yes, any
Thank
other
you.
questions,
Thank you.
anything like
Yeah.
that, anything, beyond local historic districts,
Right.
you can always reach
Yeah.
out to me.
Thank you,
Let me know.
thank you
Thank
very
you.
much for coming.
Thank you.
Thank you, that was great.
Yeah.
Right to me, it's
Yes, me too.
Okay, moving on, we've a missing Lon who did the mission statement at the moment, and he didn't send it to me.
No,
He was going to update it because I ran some comments by him.
So we'll table that.
Cameron Chia, do that. He said he was going to do it, so that's Lon. It was just I don't know whether you read it and had any comments, but I went back and some positive things on. So right, the most important thing is the last one, preliminary determination of district boundaries. Okay.
Did you guys have a chance to look through that information on the Dropbox survey?
Which one was that?
all of it.
oh,
There was
yes,
quite a
sorry.
bit.
Yeah,
Yeah,
so
it was very
It
good.
was.
Very,
Yes.
very good.
And bearing in mind what you said about contiguous properties or not, because I've had a request for inclusion of the first settlers' burying ground, which is stuck in the middle of a field, not connected to anything up the road. And that came up from one of the trustees of it all. So, but now, having gone through this, it's quite permissible, so we can make adjustments to it. It's just that my comment of it doesn't have access to it. You know, the burying ground's stuck in a field, and there's no.
Public way?
Well,
Pretty much
it is a
It
public
It
way.
is viewed
Okay.
visible.
Yeah, it
And
is.
the town owns
yeah.
it.
The town owns the public way.
Yeah.
Ah, so we
The
can
town
draw.
owns the burial ground.
The
Yeah,
town owns, right.
there's just no like parking or anything really, I
No,
mean, it's just
but
kind
I
of.
mean that doesn't matter as long as it includes, so it effectively protects the walls and just and obviously all the gravestones and things inside. Okay, so we now need to start the process off of what areas to include, right?
So I would guess that we would potentially want the southern boundary just as the Parker.
Yes.
Parker River, yes. Yeah, I agree. I mean, it's a nice. It's a geographically, it's fine. And then, and this is why I did ask her about taking whole lots in as opposed to partial lots, because it could be quite difficult. If you see what I mean.
But I do like her point because it,
Yeah, I know. You
Yeah,
can go-
keeping
they can
full,
I know
yeah.
they can manipulate the system by, or not necessarily the current owners, but future owners can then.
Well, yeah, so I think I mentioned last time too that one of there had been a previous nomination for this area, and I had thought it was to the National Register, but similar looking form, but it was actually to the endangered list.
Yeah.
That was submitted to MHC, and so exactly what you're talking about in terms of these fields being sold and redeveloped happens just north of Lower Green.
Right.
Or to west, I guess is that.
Correct.
So yeah, certainly
Yeah.
There's a lot of open space. in this area.
East and west.
yeah.
East of Lower,
Right.
yeah.
So with this inventory that you did, Madison, was this
Just
with
preliminary.
the, yeah, okay. That looks like a really good starting point.
So
Does that
basically,
go
I
into the river?
238 is first settlers burial ground, and then I did on that list include a number of the ones along High Street in between.
High
But-
Road.
High Road, thank you. But if we didn't want to include those and have burial grounds be non-contiguous, then some of those would be not necessary.
Well, I wonder whether you start off, as she pointed out, in the wider form first, and then in the process of the discussion, we can then, it's easier to, as you said, to narrow it down afterwards rather than trying to bolt on extras.
Yeah.
So we're
I think it's
starting
about
at
the story too,
250
keep that in mind in terms of
to
238
our
Two
boundaries.
is the, 238
these
is
are
the
all given
burial
different
ground.
codes, which is in here. Or is it further up?
So
Oh no, it's there.
It's the burial, yeah,
So
burial
right
ground.
up here.
yeah.
We do it, like next time.
Which then if
That's a
this-
good idea.
And then
And then it goes down to John Seaman's house.
right,
What number? Oh, down
including
to
all
He's,
of
the
these.
corner of
258,
Newman and High.
yeah.
All of
Yeah.
those are ours. And you see, this is why I thought you sort of like, to see how I thought
And I think if we're looking over on that side of High Road, the question is, do we want to include Old Town Hill? Which is.
Well, so Old Town Hill is part of the trustees of reservations,
Yes.
so I think it would be valuable to have a representative from trustees as well as Greenbelt. If,
Yeah.
if,
here.
you know, just as a goodwill gesture, I think, you know, this is what we're trying to do. Maybe you have some resources to help us out, you know, or just to inform them.
Yep.
to
Oh,
let them know.
absolutely.
Yeah, yeah.
Definitely.
Yes, we'll have to inform them anyway, sort of including the whole walkway, so this whole area here, all the way down, step along there, down there. The whole green belt, which is this block here, R12, so I think that's all green belt, all that.
R1207.
07.
Yeah.
And then McKenny's, which is 1204. And then down to where there. Yep.
So we
So that-
would want to include the 282 High Street or R12.
High Road.
I'm
High
so
Road.
sorry.
Which one? Well, these ones here. Ding, ding, ding.
282 is what?
So R1202.
I'm sorry, I didn't print this out. That would have been
Well,
smart. 282 is Rob's. No, 287.
that's 4.
Oh, 282.
That's two,
That's
oh.
Knights. That's
Oh,
the Knights
yeah,
own that.
They're sort of like absentee.
Yeah.
they're-
No, yeah.
Oh, that's just, there's no property on it because the old ferry house, or whatever they call it now, is not theirs, is it? It's yours, isn't it?
No, it's
It's
an
privately owned.
easement.
It's,
Yeah.
it's private, yeah.
But it's under
It's under a preservation
Under-
easement, correct?
preservation, what is it?
Easement
Easement.
Easement.
That's right.
or restriction.
So,
Yeah, restriction.
so in other words, it could be included, which takes it all down to the river.
Yes.
Right.
That's
And
what
then-
Madison was saying, is
So,
let's go to
do
the river.
And then
yeah.
on the
On the
other
other
side,
Yeah.
so effectively it sort of goes like that. You've got on the other side, as I think she was sort of steering to the fact you want to get properties on both sides
She did say that.
of a roadway system, which I tend to agree.
So the Fishes live on the corner of Tory Lane, and so that's what, 267.
Mhm.
Which
So
is
so
this one
that's
here,
yeah, that's this one, and
and then that one,
yeah, and then down.
and then this is a long one here.
That's the long one. That's
They're,
Travis and Lori Clark.
you said,
Yeah, they're
I-
yes, definitely, because that goes all the way back to the cemetery,
Right.
which is also historic. But
Right. Well, I was
Does
going to
someone
ask.
do you want to
Yeah.
add the cemetery? Yeah.
Is that town
And then you do
owned?
the whole of Cottage
Is it
Green,
private?
yeah? Because you've got
It's
that.
private.
The only one we own is the first settlers burial ground.
Okay.
That's it, out of all the cemeteries.
Or
That's to the
where's
best
the
of
cemetery? Yeah.
whatever I can find out.
Privately owned,
Okay.
she said. Privately owned, yeah. I
I'll do a
didn't know
little
that.
research.
I didn't know that, okay.
I
And
didn't
then there's
either.
the Jackman, whatever it is.
Oh, Jackman Willett, yeah, that's,
That's one cottage.
yeah, one cottage, where is it? There it is. That's Sons and Daughters of the First Settlers. They own that.
1696, wow.
Oh, yeah, have you ever seen it?
Yeah.
You ever been inside? It's
Yeah.
lovely.
That one was moved and then moved back, just
Oh, move back there.
as far as I know. I think it was
It's
moved.
traveled.
Yep, and they
Oh.
tried to put it as close to one of its original.
Oh, I didn't
sites.
realize
Yeah.
that. Oh,
So one could, this is long, this is Brett and Jessica, they'd be amiss, not old, but it's good enough.
yes.
I don't know what this other property is. This is the cottages. I have a feeling there's only one property on that side.
There's only, the one cottage is the Jackman Willett house.
Which is R11010, yeah.
Now, I don't know what this one is. This says one cottage. So
Oh,
that's the Jackman Willett. I don't know what this one is, or who owns that.
What is it? It's
The
a-
10
It's a
one.
lot, there's not a property. Right, we can do, she said we can do vacant properties.
Which one are you looking at, Joe?
So we're looking at,
R11010.
on Cottage Road.
Mm.
It's the third one in.
Okay. I was just looking up to
So-
see. Yeah.
It's quite difficult to take in all these,
Yeah.
because I,
No.
there's a new barn conversion.
Yeah,
They
yeah.
actually have.
But anyway, all of that.
It's actually an antique barn that was owned by Mrs. Bushy.
Yes.
Yeah.
Anyway, so,
They have, just so you know. Me map.
And then from the corner here, where
Yeah.
that's where the barn
And it
is.
does run out to you guys.
Mr. Barton's barn is here.
yes.
These are the prices, that's me, Lon,
It is.
Kathy, and
MIMAP.
the Doe Little. Yeah.
See, one,
Yeah.
this is where I have a
It's,
problem, is
Oh,
they're just,
I missed that on their website.
it'd be useful to get the barn.
Good, good, I like it, we're gonna text them, sir.
I think they're open to that.
Yeah, you can overlay a bunch of different
Yeah.
options.
Certainly, the rest of them, in other words, you go down here, and I bet they would be, although that's not a historic house.
No, it's
but-
not at all.
But,
Alright,
you know,
so
they-
the vacant lot
So,
next to Jack Nicollet is also owned by Sons and Daughters.
Oh, it is, okay, so this one is owned by Sons and Daughters. Yeah, so that's good.
The address is 3, I believe.
so we'd have to reach out to them.
And then, let's see.
Right.
Just so we know, Evergreen Cemetery is just owned by Evergreen Cemetery.
Right.
And is at
So-
9 Cottage.
Mailing address.
So how, well, this one here is
That's
the
mine.
round. No,
Oh, Kathy? Oh, yeah.
72,
Take care of.
so it's comparatively.
Goodies research.
But I mean, it doesn't matter, presumably, if someone has got a more contemporary property and happens to be within our area.
Right, that's what she said,
That's what
yeah,
she said.
so-
It doesn't matter other than the fact that they might personally
Personally.
be against
Yes,
it.
right, which we can understand.
Yeah. But I agree, I think we should try to
So,
include.
Be as continuous as possible.
Right, because eventually even those more modern properties will become historic.
right.
Right.
So I've sort of sketched out where the discussions were including the whole of the top bit of Old Town Hill,
Sure.
right down to the river there, missing out the new properties there and the new properties there. But otherwise, the only bit non-connected, which we don't know anything about, although there is an old barn there, has been converted, been pretty modernised, are all these properties here. And I think
I
they're,
think it's worth looking into this, though.
yeah,
And the other question would be, for me, this property.
That's owned by a guy who owns the, what was an old drive-in.
Oh, really? Oh, I didn't know that.
No, someone who's, won't sell it either. I think he's owns the bit behind as well.
So there are a few mentions in, I believe it's Sons and Daughters, but I'll have to double check, that there were potentially people buried outside of the limits of the cemetery. So I don't know if it's something that we should,
Yes,
Include that
people who are
property.
deemed to be witches, I think, because it was non-consecrated ground,
but
if you believe that.
That's the story.
yeah.
Are there markers?
There are not.
Bushes, I think there was a bush planted, I think, in her spot or something.
And I think it
Lilacs.
was probably beyond witches. I think it was people who didn't have the money to be, buried formally,
Good
and
point, yeah.
But folklore.
servants and people who were.
But who owns the land outside?
Let's see.
The stories.
The stories own all of that, yeah.
I think it might be worth including that entire property,
I
just,
bet you.
just Nancy's story.
I think so
So was
too.
that the burial ground?
Yeah.
Because they're letting that house go.
And there is an easement, I believe, through their property to the burial ground.
Yes.
Yes,
Right
right to
away,
access. But, because the buildings, both of them there, are falling down, they're going to develop it. I mean, that's, or their successors.
That's a good reason to put it.
So,
Put
I
that.
think they should be included.
but I don't know, one would have to have that debate, how to cover your point that there are other burial areas, how far around it.
I don't think it's ever been determined, it's just local
It's just,
Lore.
lore, I guess.
Yeah.
I mean, so I think that's, if
Yep.
archaeology needs to be done, that again goes to NHC.
okay, but the fact is, if we don't do it now, it'll get forgotten about, so we might as well
Yeah.
pitch in and,
Could I interject?
yes. from-
Right past the corner of Tory Lane, going north, there's a stone marker in the woods there.
Oh, yes, good point. That's where the old inn was, wasn't
She
it?
can show you.
Yes. I think
This is the,
for the purpose of due
Yellowed and
process,
ancient
the committee
form.
recognises. Yes, I do remember. It's
If you-
currently,
right after you go past Tory Lane,
you have to.
if you
have to
go
look for
about, 2 miles an hour, you'll notice there's a little break in the woodlands right there, and if you look in, you can see it.
it. Yeah.
No,
It is there. You need to. It's normally in the
it's,
summer.
it's not
normally,
like saying I'm over here.
Yeah.
It's
but
it
it's
needs to be
normally
weed
covered up
whacked.
with bush stuff. Yeah, it's right. Yeah, it's sort of there,
So what's,
or is it there? It's sort of like.
It's like right on the corner, right past the corner of Tory Lane.
what's the marker for?
It's where the plumber's
I'm sorry.
inn was.
It's where the old inn was.
So they were saying that Francis Plummer's house was the corner of Cottage Road and High Road,
Oh, fascinating. Wait, was this recorded?
where
It is still there.
Mr. Barton lived. So that's not true.
Well, this was an inn.
This was the inn, yeah.
I think the two storylines have intersected.
A lot of things are like that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, no, I
So,
never
but that, the
noticed that.
stone is there,
Do
so,
you mind if I take
Wow.
a picture of?
Yeah, we
yeah, you may keep that if you would like to.
Wow.
No, just kidding.
I have a couple of photos of my house of it,
I think
so
it's
we
right
can
there.
Wow, I
just-
never saw that.
I
Yeah,
think it's on one. I don't know
this is a Nancy Thurlow and Eva Jackman.
Yo,
whether they can get
Wonderful.
number one
Yeah.
to Tory Lane. I don't know.
wonderful.
So,
Wow.
because that land behind that stone, that back area was where Mrs. Bushy's racetrack was.
Oh, that's where it was, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I know the barn is there, and that used to
I
be the
thought it was, I
playhouse,
always thought it
right?
was closer to the house, but it's on the other side up the road, so. And just for clarification, High Street is Newburyport.
Yes, I'm
It
sorry.
starts at Marlborough Street, well,
Good, yes.
it gets tender.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay, so I'll leave you
No,
with that.
thank you,
Thank you.
Jennifer. do that. We will make sure that's included because it is which means we've got to embrace the property it's in, which I don't know. I think it's that one.
I think if you go on.
That's the point, right?
There is something on Macros actually, if you go on their map,
Yeah.
that I noticed it was a stone. I don't know this one, but.
Okay,
I
there is
hope
another
it's
one that's
Okay.
a
Someone's
first,
sort
a
of
landing
done
spot.
up the
Okay, so
lettering
that might be
there
it
because it
then.
doesn't look like that now.
Well, you know,
It needs a bit of
cleaning,
TLC, yeah, which I didn't like.
there's a lot of those things that, because there's where the first church, where the first meeting house was, right by your driveway.
Yeah,
I don't think any of those are objects on Macros yet.
Resources.
So.
yeah, that was stone bottom.
How did you clean that?
I cleaned it out and then really touched it up.
There's a,
It got
there's a
much.
thing, there's things out online under preservation on how to take care of stones because some of them are very sensitive and reactive to different agents that destroy them, which is certainly not what anybody wants to do, but
No.
yeah, I just hit it the other day doing a little something.
It's the lichen that's
Right.
growing all over it, which I brushed off. We have to find out exactly which property that stone's on. It's visible there if you can see it. And if it is, we'll see if we can get that one, which means I haven't sort of that way, but I think it's directly opposite the Christine John.
Okay.
It's directly opposite there. So,
Gonzalez?
no.
Those,
John
the capes
Christie.
or whatever?
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's there opposite there.
Okay.
You haven't got one down
No.
there. Really down that far.
This one was more
Yeah, right,
concentrated
But
right around the
it's-
green.
And it is, as Jan said, it's back from the road. So in the summer you can't see it because it's all covered up with sumac and other nasty things.
So it's worth going to look for it now.
No,
Yeah.
right, so I think, which means, I don't know whether you've got whoever, we'd have to try and include that one and see, get the lot in and then
So we think that one is,
R11-0-1,
so one Tory.
one Tory Lane.
Yeah.
But we'll verify that, okay? And the ones further up on that side, I don't know enough about, other than the barn, which I think is that one.
I think so.
It's got a little way.
Which one?
That one there. Barn, it's on the corner, which is already done up. Very modern.
But still antique on the outside, and it's also, you know, historically significant because it was Mrs. Bushy's. She had a playhouse there. Yeah, she owned like all of Old
Oh,
Town.
yeah.
Yeah.
The fencing around it, which is not key for the area, but okay, so what's next?
All right, so I
We-
will add in.
Preliminary, so if you do that, we'll
Yeah.
verify this. We've got effectively the preliminary area sorted out.
So I'll include, so the question is, do we want the other side of the High Road?
I don't know. The other side of High Road is it's a barn. These are all new, aren't
They are.
And they go way. That's I can't remember.
It's by Carol's
Yeah, the
place.
I think we just need to
find out what
Dig a
they
little
are.
bit more
Fi-
into
Yeah, I think we need to find out whether we will, so this bit of boundary, but the rest I think we can draw up in a map showing exactly where the boundary is.
And I'll include the other
And include the other, and then
inventory.
check out what these are and whether they are potential candidates. Because as she said, it does cause problems if you haven't got both sides. It look a bit ridiculous. I'm not sure about what we do here. But
I know, yeah,
I mean, some of those are,
yeah.
other than we find out what people think about it.
Right, that's the best course
To
of
get
action.
up. Okay. And indeed, down the bottom here, where this is not in good shape.
Right.
I don't know what the one next to the.
Yep.
Okay, so might I propose that we, for next meeting, get into these extra properties,
Yeah.
create a map, a GIS, like I brought my handbook down so I can actually learn how to use GIS. Create an actual boundary map with property lines, everything like that, have all the
Yep.
information gathered up. And then I would also, maybe it's just because I'm not as familiar with Newbury and the history of Newbury, but I would also like to do a buffer zone around our proposed property or district outline and make sure that there's a reason why those properties should not be included. So that when we get questions about why did you choose this boundary, we can look to each of those properties. That sounds okay.
Very good point. These are all fields, for example.
Right. Saying historically, they are not necessarily significant to the story that we are trying to preserve. And making sure that our narrative is there.
And the narratives are quite good, and I don't know whether this has been verified. Within this document which was done for the Greenbelt, which I think you kindly posted, there's quite a good narrative bit on showing you what happened in 1635 when the Parker River was visited by the settlers. Basically, they moved up the coast, and Boston was full, check, and then the next river, Ipswich already had going, so they were given their grant, and all, so it is historically, puts it all into context.
And I think it's important when we do eventually write our, report that we include all the indigenous stories that we possibly can,
Ooh,
the
yeah.
pre-1635 story.
Yeah.
Yes.
Very good point.
And I think especially with our language needs to be very particular and careful about not referring to us as the first inhabitants, or first settlers even, because that's a false narrative. So-
Very good,
Very
very
now,
good.
Have you, is that all, you've got all that somewhere, where it's
I'm actually working on it for
Are you?
a number of our
Oh,
sites.
that's
so-
great. My
Yeah.
daughter did that, yeah.
Brilliant. Yeah, excellent, okay, right.
So- I'll post it
Also,
later.
Lon had mentioned, when I spoke to him today, that he has documentation when the schoolhouse was, when they did some work on the old schoolhouse, the last renovation that they did, the architect that was doing the work has a lot of information about the history of the schoolhouse and that kind of thing. So that can be included in the narrative when it comes up. So Lon has that,
Okay, that's good.
and I'll ask him to bring it to the next meeting.
And I should also put out there from the Historic New England side of things, we've been doing a fair amount of research on Dolittle and the property before the building was even built, and it was a major site of enslavement. We've been doing some-
Really?
Is it? How
Wow.
did you find that out?
I am happy to send you over some pretty
Wow,
amazing
you
research.
have to read all of the, wow, that's
Yeah.
amazing.
Archival research from last year, we need to.
Yep.
Okay, you can have that if you want that. I've just sort of drawn out
Yes, that's
mine.
What a
This-
great
this is
addition.
the-
Good.
Yeah.
This is the
Yeah, that's
monument
wonderful.
in the picture. It's
Okay,
my
that's
guess,
good.
it's there.
Okay.
So just
And the
to
barns potentially.
Barns,
This-
yeah, scribble
Bushy
on that.
barn.
Yeah.
do that. Okay, so you're going to redo the revised map,
Yep.
the and all
Buffer
the
zone.
list of the people who are within it,
Mhm.
who we need to know, and then the history bit, which
Do we want to do a site walk, or would that be
We
of
would.
use?
do
Okay, at this point.
every day, but
Yeah.
But,
No, I'd love
When
to walk
do
it,
you-
especially with you folks
Yeah,
who know all the players.
yeah, we can do
there.
that. You,
We can
let us know.
pick a date,
Whenever.
we can kind of coordinate when that
Yeah.
might be, weather and,
Uh,
and I can post that, so.
Yeah,
and then-
and we can, I guess, for residents, we can do it short notice. So,
Yes, yeah,
Yeah,
it's an
we
easy
can
thing
do
to
that.
post on the website. And then, the other thing I would recommend, or I think we need to do is just make sure that we get that template for that study report.
Oh, yeah, so you want her,
I have her email.
You have her email, right? Yeah, yeah, she was good. And also, why
The
I'm sure
examples.
is she's the person who's going to be looking at it. So that was right.
Thank you so
Fairly
much
cool.
for putting that all together.
Yeah,
Well,
that's
yeah,
wonderful.
she volunteered.
She's
She said you
fabulous.
missed the workshop. I didn't even know they did workshops on it, so
That's wonderful.
she did. So yeah,
Okay.
and talking to her before, she's pretty pro. You know, making sure we just check all the right boxes.
In terms of publicity, I know that there's talk about another Newbury Day. We did a Newbury Day this past
Yeah.
summer,
Oh, yeah,
as you know.
yeah,
Yeah,
So I
and-
believe the date is already.
it's already
planned.
established?
Yeah.
Okay, so, you know, I would be happy to staff a table,
Oh, yeah.
you know, as a, you know, sort of a means to get
The word out.
the word
Such a
out, you know, people
great idea.
interested,
Yeah.
show them, you know, what we want, that
Mhm.
kind of thing.
Okay.
Do you have that date on?
Yeah, I need the date.
I'm not sure
Circulate.
it is public
Shoot us.
yet,
Oh.
so I'm not sure I'll put it out there.
Do you know what
But,
time, is it spring?
it is
No.
late summer.
Yeah.
August. Yeah.
Was it late summer? I thought it was like
It
midsummer.
was June last year.
June,
Yeah.
okay.
Yep.
Well, send around a save the day thing, just
mhm.
provisionally. So,
I don't feel that maybe you guys do that we're at the point where we can be sending out letters to,
No.
yeah.
Yeah, not
no,
yet,
no,
yeah.
Just
we,
making sure.
Yeah.
Not
because there's quite a lot of letter formats I saw in something
Okay.
Yeah.
which need to be fairly delicately looked over.
And I like her point of developing the story.
Yeah, I like that a
Yes.
lot.
Being
Yeah,
convincing,
I like
yes,
that,
we need to have
yeah,
a story straight.
Yes.
yeah.
If you will.
Yeah, that's great.
Okay, that sounds good.
Yes, that was.
Mission and action statement we can do next time.
Yes. Yeah,
Uh,
that's, okay.
And we need a date for our next meeting.
Next meeting.
So I can meet later on in the afternoon or in evenings,
Later in the afternoon works really
Yeah,
well for
okay.
me.
like after like 3:30, 4 o'clock.
Okay.
We're looking at about a month again.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, you should. Should be
Puts us around the 4th or the
Two.
13th of March.
difficult to.
13th of March is totally free for me.
What is it?
Just
13th of March.
Which is another Monday.
We can certainly look at another day of the week if you prefer.
I have something, yeah, I
Yeah,
actually
no
have
worries.
something in the morning, but the afternoon would be fine with me.
Do you want to do a walk around before then?
Sure, I think that would
I
be useful.
I think you should.
So let's,
yeah.
yeah, maybe
We
let's
can
look at
go-
that. I'm unfortunately out of town the next 2 weeks.
Okay.
When do you get back?
Let me look at my calendar.
Well, we 14th wasn't good or something?
The 6th, I come
Was
back
it
the
or
6th.
13th?
Okay.
13th.
The 13th, I'm free later on the afternoon.
13th's good for me.
For a meeting.
Just a little way out.
So if we want to do a site walk before then, the Thursday or Friday before the 9th or the 10th would work for me.
Sorry, what time was the
Oh, I don't know the time.
13th? 4 o'clock? Does that work? Jen?
Yes.
Okay. 13th of March.
So 4 o'clock.
Oh, fun fact, totally random. This is the first time in 900 years, and the first time for another 900 years, or 800, that February has 4 of every single day of the week lined up as a week exactly. 1 to 28.
That sounds
Anyway,
lovely.
the way that it's, it's very satisfactory.
Yeah.
But that's why we have the 13th Monday this month and the 13th Monday next month.
Okay.
So,
At 4 o'clock.
here.
Yeah, I'll, just on the way out, I'll just check with this room.
Oh, yeah, good
Great
point.
idea.
We can, yeah.
If it
And
is-
if you don't, I will check on the website today.
Yeah. Just with,
That's a good point, especially if we're doing it later. I know that she had said that the day, during the day was typically available, but I think something happens in the evening here. on the
okay,
day.
Yes.
when did you want to have a walk around?
So unfortunately, before our next meeting then, I could only do the 9th or the 10th.
Oh, okay. That's good.
Those work? One of those works?
I'm good for either
All
one.
right, perfect. I could do the afternoon of the 9th or
Fine.
anytime, all right?
Again, it's sort of like slightly off the record or on the record or something. I don't know what specifically.
It's on the record,
It's
we
on the
can't make any decisions
decisions.
or officially talk about anything at that meeting, but
No, it's
we'll go
just-
around and walk
just-
the boundary if we can and
Okay.
discuss the merits of properties. Okay, so let's say the 9th at,
Did you want 4 o'clock again, Joy?
4 PM?
is that in terms of light? Do we think we'll be okay that time of year?
I think it'll be
think
okay.
It'll be okay then, yeah.
Okay, just check.
We'll start to get dusky,
That's
but I
good.
think we'll be all right.
We can try 3:30 if you feel,
Sure.
Whatever.
Okay,
3:30?
9th at 3:30.
Okay.
And where do we want to meet for that?
Why don't we meet at the old schoolhouse?
Schoolhouse.
Sounds good.
Okay.
And then, that'll be central.
Yep.
Okay.
And we can park right along, like where the Greenbelt property is.
Okay, yeah. I'll just mark it. 3:30, 9, sidewalk, site visit. Schoolhouse. I'll put as the address. Okay.
Very good.
Want to entertain a motion?
Any other business? No? Okay, motion to adjourn.
Second?
Agreed?
Agreed.
We're
Okay.
adjourned at